that information monthly. They tell us the type of sorties that they're going to fly where that affects usage patterns of material. There are certain equipment fits, it's called roll equipment, so they fit certain, they suspend certain things under the pylon, the wing pylons of the aircraft and the fuselage pylon. Those equipments then, the forecast usage of those equipments and the timings of those events are forecast to us. And as you can see on the site here, there is a close relationship, and those people, are co-located with us. So information on usage, on scheduled events, and and indeed on problems. So there is a very close relationship between the flying community of the aircraft and the engineering community, which enhances our ability to deal with problems which are sometimes very closely related to the supply chain. So that may indeed be an interactive communication where the air crew identify problems, our engineering look at the cause of those problems, and our direct relationship with many suppliers back in the Northern Hemisphere, in the UK and Europe. Our engineers are in direct dialogue with our suppliers about equipment problems. Without going through other intermediary agencies, we can get to the source of a critical problem very quickly. And without giving exact examples of that, I can think of some very good cases where that's happened. Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to give examples of that?
Well, I could. Not sure where that's going to go, but for example, there were some equipment problems with equipment release mechanisms in the cockpit, and there was a push-button switch which had some failure modes which we needed to understand very quickly, and the chief engineer of our program, who you met today in the car park, we buy that switch from a European supplier, and given the problem and the urgency with the aircraft, so our customer was telling us of an immediate issue. We dealt with that, and our best and most immediate way of dealing with it was to contact the the switch supplier, and we facilitated a direct dialogue with that switch supplier. So without going through parent company, intermediary operators, stockists, etc., we were dealing directly with the manufacturer of the switch.
All right, thank you. And to what extent do you think this exchange of information between the customer and the firm affects the firm's businesses, like the firm's business? How do you think this exchange of information influence the business and strategy of this firm?
Yes. Thinking of another example, the aircraft has got an electrical generator. The electrical generator sometimes has reliability issues, and again, to address those reliability issues, we've had to work with the Air Force to implement a reliability fix. We've done that with the supplier of the equipment, the aircraft generator, and the Air Force and ourselves, and we've actually convened a workshop, if you want, with that supplier and with the Air Force to outline the problem, the severity of the problem, and what the options are for rectification of it. That precipitated a number of visits from our supply chain and engineering team to that supplier in the United States, and for the United States supplier, their engineering team, to come here to understand the problem in more detail. So without going into the technical detail, it has precipitated a very major program of reliability improvement for that electrical generator, and we have worked with our customer intrinsically to introduce that reliability enhancement across the fleet. So that obviously affects which aircraft they can fly at what time, and we work with them to schedule that aircraft offline so it can be modified to increase the equipment reliability. So we like to think that that's a win-win-win. We win because we're satisfying our customer better and we are doing it more cost effectively. The supplier wins because they are affecting an improvement in their product reliability for not only us but other users, and certainly the customer has a win because he's actually got a more reliable and airworthy product.
Okay, that's good. And in reference to what you mentioned earlier, as one of the sources of information is the customer.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to shed more light on the other customers apart from the Australian Defence Force?
Do I want
to shed more light on what the other customers apart from the
like allied markets?
Yeah.
No, not really. It's not a major part of the company's business, and I'm not really the best person in the company that can talk about that.
Okay, that's good. So, would you say generally this information from customers gives the company new improvement ideas, apart from addressing problems which they raised? You think it opens up opportunities for new improvements?
I think, yeah, a lot of the information that the customer does share with us about how he's using then again, let's try and relate it to the Hawk aircraft. The way in which they use the aircraft and the way that they have encountered problems and has been a catalyst to addressing and improving those problems has benefited the company in its ability to sell those improvements, if you want, to other customers, either as modifications or as capability improvements. But indeed, it works both ways, where another user or Air Force or customer of the platform has encountered an issue or an improvement, they've made an improvement, that information is shared with us as opportunities to provide to the Australian Air Force. And the company operates a forum called the HUG, the Hawk User Group. So it actually has a number of nations around the world, and I think it's nearly 20 air forces that use the Hawk, are invited to a location somewhere in the world, usually once a year, for the users and the company, and sometimes some key suppliers, to actually talk at a user conference or a user forum, and that's called the Hawk User Group, the HUG. So that's an example of that information exchange.
Okay, so how do you think this exchange of information between the firm and the suppliers on one hand, and the suppliers and the customer firms on one hand, how do you think this has actually led to a new direction in terms of strategy for the company?
Trying to think of examples, Ollie, are not easy, but there are occasions which, and obsolescence is probably a good idea, where a good example where we have identified an obsolescence issue, and how that obsolescence issue is dealt with does influence the ongoing. It might be we've solved obsolescence on that cathode ray tube, for example, by a last time buy, but the identification of it as an issue because of the way that we're managing the relationship with our customer, the Australian Air Force, that then therefore yields an outcome that other future customers of the aircraft and other users of the aircraft can benefit from.
Okay, and do you think this is this has enabled the company to compete better in relation to its other competitors? The strategy of exchanging information with the supplier and the customer firms and collaborating on processes.
Yeah, I guess that's a complex answer, because some of those relationships need to be what's the word I'm looking for? Where we have a confidentiality agreement, or where the teaming arrangement is